All right. Here we are going live with another podcast here on The Purpose Maker. I call this a midlife wisdom podcast. I got a good buddy here, Des Moore. Des, welcome.
Well, hey, great to be here, Doc. Happy to be here. Excited for this.
This one's going to be a fun one. So I titled this one More Insights, right?
Love
Des's
playing the
last name.
Yep.
Leadership, Tech, and Purpose. Des is, let me read it. I've got a little thing here for him. Des is the president, right?
That's right.
Of, let me see here. Common Angle. It's a managed IT service and a security space. He's been in the security space for 19 years. It's a managed security and service provider, MSSP.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. He attended North Central Michigan College, where he studied computer information systems. He sits on the board of a number of large cybersecurity companies in the U.S. Des, welcome.
Hey, great to be here.
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So, I like to start with a little gift.
Aha.
I actually pulled this out of my private collection. This is called a Liga Privada number 9. It's a very cool cigar. This one's for you for coming in today.
Well, thank you. And
So-
I'll call this my Friday night.
There you go. That one's from Drew Estates. You're going to like that one.
Smells great. Thank you.
That's a good one. All right. So give me a little update or kind of start with you. Like,
Yeah.
where were you raised? Give me a little background on your upbringing.
Yeah. That sounds great. So, Petoskey native, born in the area.
Nice.
My family has transplanted from, I would say, the Detroit area and made roots up here. And I have a couple siblings that are polar opposite of me. They are very outdoorsy, very hands-on. Calluses are on their hands. You don't see any of those on mine.
Yeah.
You know, we always joke that if it has a keyboard that can attach to it, I'm the guy in the family. Otherwise, we have a well-rounded blend of different talents that make the world go round. But got my interest in, I would say, technology at a young age. Found out probably around 9 or 10 years old that I had this just natural draw to electronics and just gadgets in general. Something that basically, if it plugged in and made noise or flashed lights,
You were playing with
oh
it.
man, for sure, and got my hands around something. My very first computer in 1998. When that came in, there was explicit rules about, hey, don't touch this. This is very expensive, very, very special. When we get home, we'll set it up. And of course, when those cow boxes, from Gateway showed up, that May day of 1998, I couldn't resist it, and next thing you know, I found myself tearing it open and hooking it up, hitting the power button.
Literally taking it apart.
Yeah, literally. Well, yeah, to the point where when I hit the power button and nothing happened besides an error message, I was like, well, either we put it back in the box and act like nothing ever happened, or we keep pushing. And there was this 800 number, that 800 Gateway. I thought, let's go for it. Let's call them up, and got some guy on the phone who that was literally the beginning of my journey, where he was walking me through tearing this thing apart on my bedroom floor, probably about 20 different
You loved
pieces.
it.
Oh man, it was the best until I look over my shoulder and there's my dad in the doorway looking at me like, what have you done? Oh yeah. It was very much one of those silent but very clear messages, like, put this together, this better work, or else. But we did it.
Roughly how old? You're still 9 or 10 then?
Yeah, I was around. Yeah. Like I have a 9-year-old daughter. So when I think of these things, I look at her and I think, man, that's wow. Yeah, I was kind of ballsy to be pushing for that, But it all worked out. I got it all put back together and hit the button again, and Windows booted. It was there, and that was it. There was no looking back. Then it was, how do I modify this? How do I make it faster, better? And that turned into helping neighbors and family members that needed it. I was like kind of the guru, which then quickly turned into, wait, I can make money doing this, so let's try that. And through that, and then going to school and the side hustle, kind of emerged into the managed service space. What you mentioned earlier, the MSP, MSSP, that translates basically to an outsourced solution, provider for small and medium businesses that don't have a need or a budget for these
For
types of
doing these.
services. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking like IT stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The
Um,
day-to-day help desk. It could be now in our world, cybersecurity is super, super prominent. That's way more than the average. Hey, I need a new computer setup or
Right.
upgrading a line of business application. Now it's how do I protect myself? And it's not just for their own reasons, but insurance. A lot of regulations around different industry are forcing this type of stuff.
Sure.
So
You got to protect patient data.
yeah,
I mean, we're in the healthcare world,
Yep.
so we definitely understand that.
When PHI, with the HIPAA rule and,
Yep.
and that plus just insurance regulations, they're tired of paying out ransomware, so they're starting right now, as it sits, about 60% of insurance claims for cybersecurity are denied because of just one reason, one checkbox that wasn't either claimed that was in place, these tools, these measures, these policies.
So a business not covering their bases.
Right.
Right.
And it doesn't help that it's so complicated.
It's complicated.
The days of having a firewall, maybe some antivirus software, and calling it good, that was forever ago,
Right.
but it doesn't feel like forever ago because cybersecurity really kind of emerged when we were in the COVID era, when, remote workforce became super relevant, when everyone was displaced and had all these new threats. You think about what takes place at home, my kids playing Roblox on their iPads versus the home office computer versus my mobile device. You have a blend anymore
of stuff in the house.
Yeah.
Different entry points.
Absolutely. That's
Right.
exactly what it is. So you have to have some places that are a little loose. You don't want to have IT locking down every portion of your life at home, because home is supposed to be a little bit more flexible. But when you're
Sure.
working from home, it just changed the landscape.
Right. Because now your personal and your business blend,
100%.
especially if you're kind of using that same computer. You can log in, and then next thing you know, you're checking your email, and
Yeah. Yeah. So knowing that in an instant, um, one bad click these days could be all it takes, and it's not always an immediate type of cause and effect. You could very well introduce a bad actor into your environment, and they call it living off the land, where they're there and they're observing. They're not necessarily making it known that they have a presence, a persistent presence. They're watching to see, how do you operate, what kind of data flows, what if they don't know who you are, what do you do, what kind of score potentially is there. These bad actors, the bigger the net they can cast, the more fish they're going to catch. They don't really care or discriminate in regards to who. There used to be honor amongst thieves. There was a rule where you wouldn't attack or ransomware hospitals or schools, anything
that's out of the picture now.
Totally, man, because times are tough, and the reality is people pay. That's it. It's the crux that you're in, because
All right. So that makes me ask a question. Our hospital got hit up here.
Yeah.
Right. And let's say it's a $20 million ransomware. Hospital pays it. Wouldn't a thief or a group kind of flag that hospital and say, "Oh, this is easy pickings. They paid. Let's just nail them again in a year"?
That's exactly what happened up here. That's it. And that's the other dirty part of that is, not only do they find this information, but they also will sell that exploit to somebody else, one of their other buddies that said, "Hey, I got mine. Here's what I know. You pay me what you think it's worth, or what I think it's worth, and then best of luck." And then ultimately that just continues to perpetuate. There's a big goal of not paying the ransom, so that it hopefully thwarts the bad actors from trying.
Okay, so let's say the bank gets, or not the bank, let's say the hospital gets nailed.
Okay.
Would your company sometimes step in and try to figure some of that out?
So we often get brought in from like a forensic standpoint.
Yep.
So it's not unusual for us to be involved from they call it right of boom. Right of boom means when an incident has happened and the bang has taken place, the compromise, the
Called
ransomware.
right of boom.
Right of boom. Yep.
Yeah.
Once we're right of boom, we are now full in incident response mode. So we have been brought in for those types of engagements where, from a forensics, like what happened, are they still persistent? What did they take? What did they touch?
Where'd they go?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then largely, though, where we try to spend the majority of our practice is in prevention. So
Getting ahead of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of frameworks that are either government or just best practice type of mindsets to it kind of goes along with that line of an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure.
Sure.
So a lot of what we try to do is essentially protect ourselves from all the different angles, of a threat actor could potentially take, and knowing that I have to be right 10 times out of 10, and they only have to be right once it's nerve wracking.
Sure.
It's tough.
Those are tough odds.
Because the threat landscape is constantly evolving.
Right.
And we so we're talking about the home office. Think about it now. Let's say, right, Des, COVID's done, remote work is maybe
shrinking.
not. We're back to the office, but the threats still exist when we think about shadow IT. Shadow IT is what takes place on your network that might not necessarily be your day to day. But think about if you have a smart thermostat, or if you're in a let's say government medical care facility, some sort of long-term residential care where you have these very fancy HVAC systems and very fancy wander management platforms or
they're hooked
nurse
up to
call
the internet.
systems. All of those have different heartbeats.
Right.
And if you as the IT department are only focused on maybe your specific applications that you use, your users, resetting passwords, you have to still be aware of what's riding alongside right next to the day-to-day stuff. That's where, because all of this is a point of entry into the network. So getting that awareness to the C-level type of decision makers or influencers, to get just the eye on that is a big challenge, because they don't really think about, well, it's just kind of sitting there. The phone server is just sitting there. The surveillance camera server is just sitting there. It's not, how
an entry point.
yeah. But in all reality, it is.
So you've grown and built a pretty big business, right?
Yep.
What percentage of, let's say, healthcare are you working in the state? Like, are you local? Are you doing statewide? Are you doing half the nation? How big has this kind of grown?
So we are hyper focused in the state of Michigan, all of the state of Michigan, every corner of it. That's home base. I love to stay as local as I can. The demand is everywhere, but there's a lot of us out there. There's not enough of us out there fighting this good fight, but our core service area is in the state of Michigan. We do get brought in often for out of state type of just the instance we were talking about earlier, where there's maybe a third party or subject matter expert type of opinion that is neutral to any kind of region or even industry to analyze or review some sort of forensic details or data. But for the most part, we try to stay within our region.
Are there industries that you prefer or you stay in, or are you across the board?
So we are across the board, but we highly specialize in government and healthcare. Those down to like local government, where we're talking counties, municipalities, law enforcement agencies.
Oh yeah.
Believe it or not, the criminal justice information systems, they call it CJIS. The CJIS data is regulated and protected at a much higher degree than our health information data is. So,
interesting.
It is very interesting. That you would think that the good guys would have more credit and burden put on protecting just our health records versus our criminal records. But here we are. This is the reality of it. So
less than 1% of people have a criminal record.
Yeah, and everybody has a medical record.
Right.
So it's the way it is. I can't really make a lot of sense of it, but knowing that that's the reality of the world, the silver lining that comes with that is that if Common Angle is able to maintain that high level of compliance for CJIS or government, everyone underneath that benefits from that knowledge.
Yeah, it's kind of just setting that baseline real high, that protection.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about cybersecurity, I think it's moving fast, that people are kind of, I don't want to say shocked, but just like they don't understand.
Yeah.
Right? You kind of just think, hey, my iPhone's supposed to have security built in.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So what could a business do that says, hey, we're starting to get concerned about this? Like, this is a real threat, or we've had you call them an insult? What is it called when?
Yeah, so like an incident.
An incident.
An incident. So the best posture is just being aware. human error is 81% of cybersecurity incidents. It comes down to a human being. So any kind of security awareness training, there's a ton of information out there. There's a lot of paid for and a lot of great free information. But a lot of the paid for platforms will allow you as an individual, a business owner, a influencer, manager, whatever the relationship is, to enroll your workforce into this and assign different topics so that you're staying relevant, because the industry is changing at breakneck speeds. I mean, we haven't even got into AI
No.
and all that
We're talking about that today.
yeah,
Yeah.
and all that can come with that, you know. So knowing that humans are the front line, and it, not just against other humans, but AI. You know, we've all had phishing campaigns and attempts to be some uncle's, you know, long lost relative that wants to send us $1 million overseas.
But people still fall for that.
They fall for that. That's while that has gotten smaller, these attacks and these attempts have gotten more clever,
More sophisticated.
much
sure.
much more. And the language barriers that were so obvious before, you know, these foreign nations are often state sponsored. You know, they're rewarded. You know, Russia and China are rewarded for finding these holes in American infrastructure. Yeah. So, you know,
So that's their job.
yeah. And whereas here in the United States, you get some big trouble for any kind of hacking, you know, whether you're a hacktivist, which means you're doing this on behalf of an organization, a message, versus hey, I'm doing it for fun to see if I can, you know, all the way down to I'm trying to capitalize on this, you know, monetize.
Sure.
So what I've always encouraged is, hey, knowledge is power. You know, we should always be learning. We're capable of continuously learning. So having something like a platform where you can be in the know, even just subscribing to a couple tech, you know, like for example, we're talking about the iPhone, you know, the news app, you can subscribe to as many different types of categories as you want and just have that kind of trickle up on your feed.
You can read about a little bit.
Yeah. Just being aware of what's out there is huge to changing the landscape.
I had a real tricky one last week. I've been working on a trademark, trying to get some trademarks done. And I got a phone call, and it was supposed to be the trademark attorney. And he had my trademark number, obviously called me. So all these things, so you just default think it's legit. He's talking on the email that they sent. There was a link to go pay. Excuse me. And what I did was look at the URL address, and I know trademarks go through the government.
Yeah.
And it wasn't .gov. And he was like, "You need to make this payment right now. You know, I'll just wait on the phone." I'm like, something doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Like, this is really, really strange. Fortunately, I had read a letter that was posted on the back end of the government page from the attorney that read it over. So I had some knowledge, and he didn't know any of that. And I was like, this is really, really strange.
Yeah.
So I saw one thing on there that said you had like 48 hours to pay. And I'm like, you know what? I've got 2 days to pay. I don't need to pay right now.
Right.
I would have lost my money
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah.
If I didn't slow down and look at that URL and go, this is not a legitimate trademark attorney from the government.
So what that's called is social engineering, but that is a very, very common attempt to or method to scam or compromise an individual. They play on emotion. They try to put a sense of urgency, a timeline, you know, whether it is in this case, got to pay now, but usually there's some sort of penalty or risk that they're trying to thwart. They want to play off those emotions. So, you know, and the faster they talk, the more confident that they talk, the more likely they are to get their objective accomplished. And good on you for being aware, you know, that.
Well, the other red flag was I could hear another person in the background yelling.
Yep.
I'm like,
yeah, it's not clatter of a keyboard or someone in a call center that happens to be like a cubicle away. Yeah, there's why, you know, we're certain jobs aren't working from home where there's the dog and baby in the background or
this was a legitimate attorney. They'd be in an office talking to me.
Correct.
I wouldn't be hearing people,
especially from the U.S. Patent Office.
Yes,
you know, of all places, for sure.
Sure,
for sure. No, good on you. And that's just it. That's back to that awareness, having that, you picked that up from somewhere, whether it was on the back of that piece of paper that you saw, but just having that awareness of being, I don't know, intentional about wanting to see what is happening. How are we? I don't want to create a sense of like panic and impending doom, or paranoia, but you really kind of have to have a little bit of paranoia, especially in today's, digital landscape.
Is this legit?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because we all receive stuff that, oh, that's very obvious that that's spam. But now we're talking like, what, if we see something that is language barrier, that's a red flag. If it's a logo that's a little off, okay, that's a red flag. But with AI, this is this is now, I don't care what language you speak. I can draft anything from a marketing standpoint,
Just
from
have AI translate it.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and even more, design it. You don't even have to have it translate. You can just with a few keywords, it can generate text, images.
Mm.
I mean, down to like even formatting for specific types of, if you want to use email, if you want to leverage that, or even design a website so that it looks authentic. I mean, bad actors are now even getting to the point where they'll register domains that are very similar to a legitimate one. So common angle. All right. I have COMMONANGLE. I also have 1E.com because the number one and the letter L are
Look very
very,
similar.
absolutely. So as a preventive measure, it would not be unusual for a bad actor to try to take those very similar characteristics, and then at a glance, it would read common angle. You wouldn't notice because the one and the L look the same. And if it looks like it came from Des at commonangle.com,
Sure.
well, all of a sudden, that there's some authenticity behind that. Even if it isn't the exact same domain, it to the human eye, to the untrained eye, even the trained eye,
Yeah, for your first touch with the
yeah,
business or something.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's the fact that AI can do this and generate this type of stuff so quickly and so incredibly accurate with such precision from really anywhere. It 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 really kind of makes the hair stand up on my the back of my neck, because your security awareness training, the stuff that institutional knowledge of what we're kind of familiar with from yesteryear's type of attacks, or their cleverness when it comes to what they're trying to pull off. It now looks like the brand, the bank. It does look like the bank that you work with. It does look like the line of business application that you're familiar with,
Yeah.
and the fact that they can do it so effortless. They tear it down and try something else.
That happened to a buddy of mine. He wired like 20,000 to a dealership for a snowmobile. It didn't go to that dealership.
Ah,
So somebody was in the email, sent a fake email with a link. They wire the money, doesn't go to the right place.
yeah,
That is unbelievable.
yeah, and it's scary because it's gone. It just vaporizes. And they're on to the next one. They're on to the next target. And when we have international waters, there's no repercussions
There's
or
no
consequences.
jurisdiction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It really makes you pause, or hopefully makes you pause and have different protocols. Just at our office, I can't tell you how many times I get these fake, hey, please update my payroll information emails. I got a new bank account. Here's my new routing number and my new account
Are these
number.
coming with your employees' names on them?
Exactly. That's exactly it. So they've are able to scrape like LinkedIn or any of these other entities that might advertise where one works at, and then grabs that information and sends it to generic, email addresses, or sometimes they're able to identify titles again using like LinkedIn. Okay, there's Des, president at Common Angle. All right, who's our human resources person?
Hmm.
Who's our payroll? Whatever the appropriate title to seek out, and then they send these. It's forced old school paper methods of where, hey, if you have any of these changes, here's a form that you print, take a pen, fill it out, and hand it in, because we're just not playing that game of being wrong, because
Right.
it
You can't afford to be.
no, and,
Yeah.
and then you take it a step further. Let's ignore the fact that maybe it's someone spoofing an address. Spoofing means where you're that appearance of it being from the individual when it's not. It's a fake account. What if it's a business email compromise? What that means is someone's legitimate email address has been hacked. Now they have access to that account, and they're sending to these individuals in your contact list or group. That's a very real thing. That's back to the living off the land, watching and observing. That's a very, very popular thing to do. Is who are you emailing? What kind of entities are you emailing? Are you doing business with someone frequently? Are they sending invoices? All right. So, just before our sit down today, I was dealing with something where we have a client in the lumber industry who was concerned that they received an invoice from someone they do business with quite a bit, and it just felt like, wait a minute, I thought we just paid this, but everything checked out. The invoice looked identical, just modified invoice number, similar products that they purchased in the past, but the cadence wasn't correct. We just bought this. We did our monthly order. So because of
the timing,
but if you have an army of people that pay these things,
they don't even look.
No. If the left hand and right hand aren't aware, but because of that, just that intuition, that feeling that even though this looked okay, and then when they called their vendor that sent this, they had no record of that invoice number, which then raised more concern and more, hey, are we the ones that were compromised? Was it them that was compromised? What's going on here? But something as innocent as like just a lumber transaction, they don't discriminate. And it was, again, requesting a wire, large sum amount, yep, and conveniently updating their, hey, here's our new routing and banking information for this transaction, so
here's our new one.
Right. Yeah. And that, and in some cases that isn't completely unusual to have different accounts that things are sent to. So it's a very fluid game right now, and being aware can be exhausting.
When I kind of realized this is a really big deal, we did a trip out to West Point last summer with our middle daughter for a soccer camp she was invited to. And West Point is building a $200 million cybersecurity building where they're going to start teaching their cadets cybersecurity. And obviously the U.S. military needs to kind of be on the forefront of that.
Yeah.
Because you're talking personal stuff. Could you imagine large scale problems?
That's what keeps me up at night. I'm not even joking. When I see some very, very sophisticated hacks and attacks, and then I look at our infrastructure and where we sit, and again, being heavily involved in government, it freaks me out because there's very low tech ways of accomplishing some of the goals they want. And when you have infrastructure that is aging and is just lagging, it makes it all the easier. I'm not sure how big the listening radius is, but when we went through the ice storm and we were without power for those couple weeks, it was a glimpse of what happens if our grid is attacked.
Sure.
What happens if any of our natural resources,
can't get fuel.
Absolutely.
Can't heat.
I mean, just look at the challenges that we had up here for those few weeks that, right back to the 1800s. And now you put that on a national scale, or even just even a regional scale, it has severe consequences very, very quickly.
Sure. Could you tell me a little bit about AI and how that's kind of how it's going to show up in this world?
Yeah. Do you use AI currently?
So
for anything?
I've messed around with a couple of different AI. I've tried ChatGPT. I haven't enjoyed that at all.
Okay.
I tried Claude. A buddy of mine told me about that.
Yep.
And then I've been messing around with Grok.
Okay.
What I like doing with mine is testing my AI to see how smart it is. So in my world, I have lots of access to x-rays. And so those x-rays are professionally read by radiologists, so we know what's on them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll post one on there and ask AI to read it, and I'm concerned how often it doesn't find what we call the salient finding. That's like a really big issue on an x-ray. Mm-hmm. So once that started to happen, I started going, I really can't trust this. This is not a place where you have to put all your trust. It can do some functions very quickly and efficiently and do some research and stuff, but I can't type stuff in here and expect that this is going to give me back the truth
right
all the time. So that's kind of been my experience with it.
Yeah, and kudos to you for doing that, because it's exploded in the last couple of years. AI has become a buzzword for one, but what does that really even mean? I mean, some will go back to the days of Watson when it was on Jeopardy and was a contestant or was beating the chess the world's best chess player, but also where it was hopeful and then its intended purpose was in healthcare, in medicine.
That's what IBM Watson was designed for.
Absolutely.
And the first round failed.
Right.
Sure.
But just like most things, you have to try and fail in order to succeed later, right?
Yeah.
To improve. And AI has tremendous potential. I use it daily. And it's probably saved me about, I would honestly average about 15% of my day has been automated or assisted with AI to some capacity.
And are you using it on a desktop? Are you using it on the phone? How do you use it?
All of the above.
Yeah.
All of the above. And with it becoming more and more integrated with our day-to-day stuff, the latest iPhone, the latest, Android phones have a lot of that stuff, built in, whether it's partnered with, ChatGPT or its own flavor, that, it's you can have your own private branded AI, your own large language model, which what that translates to, an LLM is just basically a tremendous amount of data, text, websites that it just consumes and becomes very familiar with, that it can recall and assemble, very similar to like what how our brain handles and stores data and how it tries to recall.
Lots of data. Sure.
Yeah. So it's great for brainstorming. It's great for being creative. Anyone that hasn't used AI and wants to dip their toes into it, one of the coolest ways to do it is pull up ChatGPT, Grok. I don't care if it's Claude. Pick your poison and go to your refrigerator and say, hey, I have these ingredients and I need dinner ideas, and list everything you see in your fridge and everything you see in your pantry or whatever you're working with. I work with a lot of college kids that are transitioning from college to the professional workforce. So they're used to having those bare bones fridges. So, in those pantries. So we get, getting real creative on, hey, I need dinner ideas and I only have this, it's small.
And it'll spit out
tons and with step-by-step instructions and portion sizes and cooking instructions.
Recipes.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it really takes the thinking out of it. And that's just a fun way to kind of get involved. But where AI really takes off is the creativity that it can help and just spark or influence. It could help draft maybe starter content or framework to a presentation you want to have. The creative aspect of it, the takeaway is that it's not perfect. You started with that. You have to have a level of understanding that this could potentially hallucinate, and a hallucination is not what you and I are familiar with when it comes to like seeing
something
that isn't there. A hallucination in AI terms is when it is trying to bridge a gap between knowledge that it doesn't have and unintentionally fabricates
just
something.
Makes it up.
Yeah, whether it is citing a source, a book that doesn't exist, a case law
I've seen
that. Case law that never even was a thing that it thought. It's all predictive. AI. The best way to describe it is when we're texting on our phones, and it has that predictive text. It tries to help you think based on what it anticipates you might wanting to say.
Move,
yeah, right. So if it's able to be beneficial, great. It learns from that. I want that. I tap that button. I'm trying to say this. Fill out the rest of my text. But that's what it's doing on a larger scale. Is it's instantaneous. There is no human emotion. There is no capacity for awareness around that. It should tell you that this could be incorrect, but it's often
it doesn't.
No, it's often taken as gospel, or the user kind of just
doesn't know.
Yeah, puts a lot of trust into the fact that hey, this spit it out. It sounds good. I'm gonna roll with it.
Yeah, I remember asking it to find some research and cite the links. So I took those links, pasted into Google Scholar. They were not legitimate links. I'm like, this is really interesting.
Yeah, it's constantly improving, and it comes down to kind of a simple fundamental that like what it's gathering and gleaning information from. If it's really only as good as that. So if it's garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And when we're met with such a diverse landscape of information and different sources, it's not surprising that it's only been a couple of years that we've really been in this. Watson's been a handful of years, but where it's really started to like.
When did Chat come out?
Oh gosh, I want to say probably prominently within the last 3 years.
Oh,
You
that's
know, so
very
it's
short.
it's an infancy compared to just modern tech and even chasing those timelines back. I mean, we're when you mentioned in the introduction 19 years, that I've been doing this, it feels like it's been a blink of the eye, but it's that's a drop in the bucket compared to what the future will hold and where the direction that this is going. I mean, our own governments, countries are spending ridiculous money in this race.
Well, we have to
Yeah,
get ahead.
100%. So there's definitely a future. It just has to be done right, and it has to be very, very. We had to be very aware that there's limitations and that there could potentially be big limitations.
I'm happy I found those.
Yeah,
Yeah, that way I could interact with it in a way that I'm like, all right, this is interesting in what it can do, but I have to always double check it.
Yep. Yeah. Don't give up on it. There's a future for it, and there's a place for it right now that it works really, really well in. And then there's areas that are constantly improving. And considering it's only been a couple years
Sure.
and seeing where it started and where it's at now and the direction that they're hoping to take it.
Any kind of predictions how AI could improve our lives?
Yeah. So just a simple.
Let's say not just personally, let's say society.
Yeah.
Could we get to a point? I don't want to say you work less, but you know what I mean, where it starts to do more stuff that allows us to focus on more things we'd like to do.
So kind of like the Jetsons with Rosie, where they had the robot that can kind of talk to you and also do the day-to-day type of stuff. There's a lot of that right now actually being developed. Tesla has their own robots that are underway that are designed to be human assistants to do the very things that we're kind of describing right now, where, hey, I don't feel like cleaning the house. I don't feel like going to get the mail. I don't feel like doing this, that, or the other thing. And having a little assistant that does that for you it's already on the horizon.
That would be wild.
It would be.
See this little thing marching out to the
to the
go
mailbox.
grab the mail.
Yeah. Go walk the dog, please. All right, I'll see you in a little bit. That stuff is very much actually there. It's expensive and it's not perfect, but it's right now it's actively, there's a lot of money that's being poured into this because there is a potential future. And even broader strokes, with military and law enforcement, there's a lot of benefits to having that type of arsenal for our own human preservation, self-preservation from entering areas that we wouldn't want to from a just from a safety standpoint, or just from I've been there, done that. I don't want to have to get the mail every day. The ideas and options are truly endless, because the goal is to supplement a lot of what we don't want to do, so we can focus on what we enjoy. And while we focus on what we enjoy, it enhances what we enjoy even more. So it's trying to create as many wins as possible, while minimizing the negative that goes with this. And what I mean by negative is that with this type of have you ever had a concern or thought where, like, hey, I just talked about this and now I'm getting ads served on my phone?
Oh, it already happens.
Yeah.
I don't think it.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
We mess around with it to make it do that.
Oh, for sure.
On things that we're not even interested in.
100%.
Yeah.
So that's the exact risk I'm talking about, is that, all right, back to it being a computer. What I'm saying and doing, and what, more importantly, I'm saying and doing when I'm not even aware that it's watching or listening, is a concern. It can be a threat. Just like we're worried about static data being hacked and stolen and exfiltrated. This is an autonomous object that is always listening and retaining information. So there's that risk that goes with that side of it.
I always get a chuckle when I'm on a website or something and it asks, the computer's checking to see if I'm human.
Yes.
That always makes me almost laugh out loud. I'm like, this is so funny.
Yep.
This thing is checking to see if I'm real.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a real interesting thing. So let's go back a little bit. You've been doing this for 19 years. Talk to me a little bit about leadership. Okay. So you got your foot in the door working for somebody first.
Yep.
Okay. And then about how old were you when you're like, you know what, I'm going to jump out and I'm going to spread my wings?
So great question. I I so my very first job right out of school was for a managed service provider, and my goal, my dream was, hey man, I want to be the local hero. I want to work for a big box company that I get to have the water cooler talk. I get to know, Jim in accounting and Sue at the front desk, and be the local guy that makes it all come together. And while all my buddies were getting those jobs, my mom was like, "Hey, here's this job that's in Petoskey, and it's does computers, with the air quotes, as much as my mom would be able to discern from what I went to school for and what I wanted to do versus what the buzzwords in this posting were for. So fast forward, it was a managed service provider. I thought, well, maybe it's better than nothing.
I should look
right?
at it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm broke right now, so so I got to do something.
Were you still living at home
Oh,
too?
absolutely, absolutely. So I
I'm
think that's
broke
where the
living
other,
at home. Here's
yeah,
my
and,
motivation.
yeah, and that was where mom's motivation was too. Is
Oh, yeah.
you're not you're not going to be broke and living at home. So I inquired, and fast forward, took the job with them. And the difference between the in-house, where my big dream was, versus working for a managed service provider, was that now I am a servant to many different networks, and versus being just this guy that is very, very intimately
In-house on
familiar.
one business.
Yeah, one system, one line of business applications, the same user base. You just get kind of comfortable. But that comfortable is not something that I usually lean into. I like being
Right on
cutting
the
edge.
edge.
Yeah, man. If you're not, you're just taking up too much room. Otherwise, if you're not living on the edge, so and in IT, man, it you blink and you miss something. So little did I know though back then, this young 19-year-old still going to school, kind of thinking he wants to be this guy. Fast forward, go to kind of gets an idea of what he wants, and is now at the front step of adulthood, for real adulthood.
Sure.
I took this job, and what little did I realize was that was the best possible fit for me, because there was somebody somewhere upgrading to the latest and greatest. Being a managed service provider for so many different businesses, everybody had a different life cycle type of approach or calendar, so that somebody was hitting that upgrade cycle. They
have to.
So it required me to be a subject matter expert in a lot of things, especially the bleeding edge. And then knowing that there would be this tail behind my knowledge of what, might be legacy. And legacy doesn't have to be 20 years ago. Legacy can be a couple of years ago now when it comes to equipment. But having to be this very proficient expert around very core types of technologies that were constantly evolving, man, that scratched that itch that I needed, so
That got it going.
yeah. So that's what created this this fire in me to not want to settle. And then getting within about a year and a half, no mastery at that point, but the hunger was there, and I was quickly reaching ceilings that I wasn't going to settle with. I wanted
Couldn't
more.
go any further.
No.
Yeah.
And I could make parallel moves, but I saw the trajectory, I saw the path, and I'm like, I'm also not a big person of working for the man when I want to kind of be the man,
Sure.
and knowing that I had this vision, and I have just a keen ability to kind of see around corners, because when you're passionate about something, you don't, it's not really work. It's not really even a hobby.
No, it's
right?
part of you.
It's part of
Yeah.
you. Yeah, it's part of that purpose.
Yeah.
So finding my purpose at such a, I don't know if 22, if I knew then that was my purpose, but I felt something then that
Definitely compelled.
never had before. And it just took but a few more months of realizing that, like, all right, I'm not moving as fast as I want to be. I'm moving as fast, but the organization isn't, that I'm part of.
Sure.
And I got recruited by a security company that worked with this MSP. And that's where the MSSP, Managed Services and Security Provider, came in.
Yep.
So I made that move to that firm, and found myself within a couple years really passionate about the security space, but also up against the same roadblocks of, like, man, I'm stuck again.
Yeah.
I want to advance. I'm capable, and this wasn't so much a me thinking that I was, bigger than my britches really were, but it was truly like, I'm stuck
I need to
here.
move faster.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I want to, and I'm capable of that. So it within a year or two of that that focus, I knew, or that awakening, I knew that there's some areas I need to polish still. I'm not ready to jump out of the nest, but I know that I know what I need to do to get there. And that focus I never took my eye off that prize. And I in 2006, I made the move to, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it on my terms.
You're going to go out on your own.
Yeah, yeah, and I never looked back. It was great, because now if I'm getting mad at anybody, it's myself. If anyone's slowing me down, it's me.
Okay, so did you launch your own business? Did you buy a business? What'd you do?
A little bit of both. So I formed Common Angle and bought the assets from a company that I was working with that kind of helped get the foundation of my future established. That firm was more geared for enterprise, and that was what they felt the most fulfilled in was larger projects, and just being from the area, hometown, kind of having that blend of the non-stereotypical IT person, a little bit of a personality, but also just those roots and those connections, the relationships that I've formed from all those years. It was a great launching opportunity for me. So between buying those assets and then just forming, my own company and hitting the ground running.
Did you get any employees with that purchase?
So yeah, so two of them, which were a couple of the hires that I had at that very small MSSP.
Yeah.
And then took that, and
so you're starting with 3 people.
Yeah, yeah. So and it was big time. That was a lot of responsibility for a young 20-something. Just because it's one thing if it's just me and at the time my girlfriend, who is now my wife. But it was just, we could start over. We can do whatever we need to do.
Sure.
The higher the risk, obviously the higher the reward, but it's a lot different when you have other families that you have to consider now.
And now how many families do you?
About 30 of them and we run a very lean operation that's intentional, back to that leveraging, where we can, working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
But it's the challenge is I need a lot more bodies. It's
to grow.
Oh yeah. I could very easily pick up another 10 and have the work. I'm at a point where I have to be very selective on what we do.
Buy another company.
Well,
and all their employees.
Well, that's a great segue into why aren't you hiring more? Why don't you buy another company? The landscape right now, cybersecurity is a huge buzzword, and there's a lot of great programs out there. The reality is that when someone goes to school for cybersecurity, they go through these programs, and then they're ready for the workforce.
Please don't tell me they're outdated.
They're not outdated. What the problem is they lack the fundamentals.
They don't know what to do.
So in order to support a network, there's a lot that goes with the day-to-day, knowledge that you have to have to carry over to securing it. And if you don't understand what you're securing, how can you effectively secure something? So a lot of what you lose by not being part of the help desk, the network team, it's so crucial. So crucial. For every one person leaving school right now, there's 4 cybersecurity jobs waiting for them. And those 4 cybersecurity jobs, like that's great if you're the person in the chair that you take your pick. But the reality that also comes with that is that those people are not qualified, or not. It's not that they're not qualified. It's that institutional knowledge that goes with working in the environment that you're securing. When you don't have that, and you don't have a lot of life skills that go with outside the box thinking, that field gets narrowed very quickly of those that are truly qualified.
How do you test for that?
So we have a very, very, very long, exhausting interviewing process that only really scratches the surface, because you don't want to also insult an individual and waste their time. So we're very upfront, like right out of the gate, that this isn't going to be quick. And if you're not okay with that, this is great.
It's not a good fit.
It's already not a good fit.
Yeah,
exactly. So when we go through that vetting process, this isn't a 9 to 5. The security mindset is a constant. The learning that's required is constant.
Constant.
If you sleep, you're dead.
Sure.
we're dealing with people that have nothing better to do across the pond. That instead of putting their talents for good, there's a lot more money for bad. And finding good people that want to fight the good fight is tough. It's
Sure.
tough. So and then finding those that are qualified. Uh, we've flipped to kind of a homebrew U where we will absolutely recruit these, the top of the top, but there's a rigorous like 1 year boot camp that they go through at Common Angle. Yeah, yeah. On the network side,
Wow.
yeah, it's a requirement though. It's I mean for what's on the line, we have to know.
That you know your stuff.
Yeah, you don't go
And
to
we
a
can
five
trust
star.
you.
Yeah, you don't go to a 5-star restaurant with someone that has never
Been working at McDonald's for
yeah,
4
that's right.
years.
That's right. You
Yeah.
you want that comprehensive and holistic approach and view to what they're doing, and
Sure.
that's been our biggest limitation right now is that talent. But we've made great inroads. We're trying to be the change we want to see. And if that means that we invest that time up front, it comes with a great risk because I get a lot of criticism from my peers that they say, Des, man, you're training your competition. You're giving them, they're going to do what you did. They're going to get all this information and go. But there's also way more to that than being just transactional. That's where a lot of my historical relationships fell short, was that it was transactional. You do this, you get that, and we rinse and repeat versus the culture at Common Angle is, we're very security.
Family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're security first. We it's not just these families that I look out for and what decisions that I make and how they affect them, but it's also getting their buy-in with every step of the way. Building that thoughtful and intentional type of environment is truly the key to our
Yeah, it's
success.
called culture,
Absolutely.
which is leadership.
Absolutely. And you can't reproduce that unless you really, really believe it. You can't just mimic and mirror.
Or you can't reproduce it unless you didn't experience it at some of your other jobs.
100%.
So had you experienced what you're creating, you might have stayed.
Yeah. Oh, I know I
Yeah.
would have. I know I would have.
Yeah.
I mean, I have literally had those conversations where that this isn't a me thing. It can be a we thing, but it's mostly a them thing. That
Yeah.
it's you get lost in that kind of the minutia of it being transactional and the bigger prize. There's that institutional knowledge that goes with someone being around. Not only your organization, but what they've seen as part of your organization, other walks of life, and taking that into consideration. I mean, I literally tell people that we have the best in breed retention. I mean, I have staff that's been with me for 16 years. That's unheard of. Just to put it in perspective, IT has about a 40% turnover annually. And why is that, Des? Well, the why is because it's a transfer of knowledge. You're taking what you've learned and you're going down the street. If I'm working at McDonald's for $11 an hour and I'm flipping burgers, and BK says, "Hey, I'll pay you $11.50 to flip mine," I'll put on a different apron. It's a transfer of knowledge. I'm not reinventing any wheels here. So
Sure.
in our industry, it's and then you add in like remote workforce. So if I'm working from home, my commute doesn't change from my bedroom to my home
Whether I
office.
work for a New York company or a California
Absolutely,
company. Right.
exactly. It's the same walk to across my living room to my home office.
Right.
So it's crazy that this is what it's up against. But culture is everything because we're in a very high stress industry as well. We're thinking all day, every day. That's the muscle I use the most is my brain.
Sure.
By far. So
That's exhausting.
It is. And when I said earlier we have to be right 10 out of 10 times, where any threat actor or bad actor has to be right, find our one miss. That's not a joke. There's a lot on the line. It's
Sure.
a very thankless industry. No one ever calls when to say hi, right?
Hey, thank you for protecting us.
Right.
No.
It's always, hey, something's wrong. Something's not right. I need help, whatever the case is. So it's you have to be built a certain way. And there's a lot of things that I would aspire to be, but I just know that I don't have it. I'm not built that way. And sifting through that is what I spend my time on. When we bring on anyone, for consideration for employment, that's the front and center is what kind of cultural fit. I can teach a trade all day long. I can polish that. Back to that homebrew you. The one thing I can't teach is a personality. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So did you create this organically from your thought process? Did you read? How did you kind of come across I got to create something because culture is completely different than business.
Totally.
Totally.
But you need both.
But you need both. And you're creating it. So where did that creation come from?
So it did not oversimplify it. It is truly, truly not doing some of the crap that others did. That you
didn't like.
That I didn't like, and it wasn't. And I want to be clear. When I say I didn't like something, there's parts of my job that I have to do every day that I don't like. Right.
That's life.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That as long as we can get on the same page that that's life,
Yeah.
that's going to go with anything. It's really comes down to not doing the same. How would the golden rule? I was raised in an environment where do unto others as you'd want them to do unto you, and that's exactly what I have led with. Is that hey, I want to create an opportunity where there is no ceilings. You want to go as high as you want to go.
Sure.
Let's go.
Go.
I need small cogs in this machine, and I need giant ones, and every other size in between.
Yeah, you almost like letting them start a business inside of a business.
100%. Because if I can mentor, and not even officially calling it a mentor, but if I can be that example, right? That hey, here's this transparency in the organization. Here's this open door policy. No matter how many direct reports or leadership members I have that are helping lead other groups or pods and within my organization, my door is always open. Making sure that I make the rounds just to say hi, just to be available, just to lead from that example is tremendously just valuable to the outcomes that I've seen time and time and time again. I'm not no business savvy expert. I just know how I would like to be treated.
No, but it's very intuitive.
But it should be, and it's shocking how I've seen so many come and go in the time that I've been doing
how much
this.
it's lacking.
Yeah. And that compassion element to culture is it's insanely necessary, and mental health and that awareness that goes with this industry. It's like I was half joking about no one calling to say hi. It's very serious. Like it's very often where hey, 5-alarm fire, and then as soon as we're back on operational, goodbye. Like they're back at it because now they're playing catch up from whatever delays or shortcomings that have come from this outage or whatever the situation might be. So creating spaces for people to try and fail, to genuinely listen to their feedback. The best decisions that have ever been made have come from the trenches.
It's amazing how smart people are, isn't it?
No, my goodness, yeah, and giving people an opportunity, and to fail safely. Where in an environment where like, hey, this might not be the right answer, but let's talk through why that might not be the right answer.
I've come across that philosophy with one other gentleman, but most people are raised to hide their failures.
Oh yeah, pride's dangerous.
Yeah, and so then when you have a culture now where you're encouraged to fail, that feels strange.
It does. Yeah. And when it happens, it creates coaching opportunities. That's really what it is. It's not a shame on you, rub your nose in the carpet kind of thing. It's truly to what are the lessons learned? What are the takeaways from this? How do we improve? How are we ever better by just taking the lessons that came with that, and not just the negatives. It's equally important to take that same approach with the positives, the wins. How do we reproduce this? How do we make this an even better win the next time? Without spending copious amounts of time analyzing a lot of that. That's why I use AI to do that. No, I'm just kidding. But no, but like but in all seriousness though, there are ways of finding a good balance. And promoting that as a culture first type of work environment. It sifts out, let's say we do get a hire that, hey, great resume, amazing interviewer, but just culturally somehow
doesn't fit.
Yeah. And knowing that life happens, man. Yeah. We've had a lot of
People
great conversations.
Struggle. Yes, they do.
And we've had a lot of great conversations around where all of a sudden someone takes a sharp left. Yeah. Their life is nice, easy breezy, cruising down the highway, and then all of a sudden something happens. And I've had my share of tragedies that I've had to navigate through,
sure.
But that's also why it's super important to build that culture, is that you have resources that are internal, providing, I intentionally provide the best benefits that money can buy, because I want to take care of those people so that they can genuinely show up to work every day knowing that, hey, if something happens,
I'm protected.
Absolutely. Yeah. From a health standpoint, from a financial standpoint, but also from like a relationship standpoint, and having that any kind of tie, any kind of roots, any kind of golden handcuffs, all of those. I'm taking all of those because I don't want to do this. I put too much time into
Sure.
into my
Attract
staff.
and keep talent.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. So it's why it allows us to grow and that do things, slip through. Absolutely. But that's where there's the postmortem. You look through and like, okay, how did this happen? And what do we do to just try to prevent that even a little bit
Mm.
the next time? And my whole focus is that if I can improve one thing, 1%, and I'm not talking a big thing, it can be even really small, but just one thing once a day, 1%, the cumulative impact that has over the course of any given time is significant. One saying that has changed my life, and I use it and I say it every chance I get, and I'm going to say it right now, is that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The
Mm.
second best time is now.
Right.
And then putting those those trees in the ground, putting those seeds in there. It might not be that immediate. Hey, it's taking root. Now there's this sprout. It might not be seen right away, but those 1% increments. It just makes for a better person, makes for a better outcome, and then that just kind of becomes I don't know, it becomes part of your identity, and then it becomes contagious, and it becomes an expectation because you're seeing everyone else kind of buying into this idea and living this lifestyle,
Yeah.
working with a purpose.
You don't have to improve overnight,
No,
but improvement is part of the equation.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a principle that can be spread out over lots of areas of life.
Yes.
I like finding people that are interested in improving.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's even like my own health journey. Drawing parallels from what I'm doing at work to just to be a healthier, version, and the most healthiest, version of
Mhm.
myself. And that's not just inspired from myself, but then when you start having, my own family, my own children, being responsible for other people who have families and children, it's just it's a good cascading, a positive effect.
Sure. Yeah, I like it a lot. Um, so we're drawing on this identity and this purpose stuff. You have a lot of different identities. How do you juggle those?
And the I'm by being myself, honestly, by being genuinely myself. That has been crucial, because if I'm not authentic, it's hard. I can walk into a room. I deal with multiple different personalities any given day. Doctors, lawyers, to the receptionist, to the bookkeeper, the billing person. We all have different types of personalities that we interact with, and varying degrees of depth to those conversations. The best way that I've been able to do it is just to stick to my moral compass. Find that North Star and follow that by being myself. That authenticity of taking my own advice, eating my own dog food. Of, hey, if I fail, fail publicly.
Admit it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll be the very first. I lead by that example. Is, I guess, the short of it is be the version that I want to see. And at the end of this, if I can leave this industry just a tiny % better than I found it, just a smidge better than I found it, then that's a huge success. But by living by that example and try to breed that positivity and paying that stuff forward, it makes it easier to be these different personalities, because it's often difficult to it should be difficult to break really, really bad news to a business, someone that has built their entire life, spent their entire life building something, and then having it be ransomed in a heartbeat because of the person at the front desk clicked the wrong link and inadvertently shuttered someone's life. You have to be able to navigate that with a certain level of grace.
Sure.
All the way down to the big wins where you're celebrating someone's accomplishments and opening a new branch office and all the good things that come with it. There's a lot of emotional bandwidth that has to come with this.
Are there any positive stories from a company like that gets breached, ransomware either is put into the system or something? Can you ever reverse that?
So that there has been some amazing wins. There's been times where I have a ton of great prevention stories, but there's been some really stellar happily ever afters.
Recovery stories.
Yeah. Where the just taking a if there's a takeaway from today's call, is that there's still a lot of good out there. There's a lot of good people, there's a lot of good products, a lot of good tools, just great posture that you can take, but stuff still can happen and does happen. And even when it does, and if it feels like, you know, your chips are down, as long as you've tried to do what you can, you know, maintaining backups, if you are able to, you know, make that part of your lifestyle to take more than just a I have it on a thumb drive or I have it in the cloud. Have a couple different versions of that. The biggest thing that I've seen time and time again is that I just assumed my phone was backing up. I just assumed that, you know, the cloud would have this. But back to the good story, you know, there has been times where because of those little bits of a proactive approach to just maybe good hygiene, cybersecurity hygiene, or just best practices, you know, we've taken people from the ashes. We've had some where it's been encrypted, but the encryption the bad actor was using was legacy, and there was decryption methods, so we were able to like Uno reverse them.
Sure.
You know, that is, there's probably no greater feeling than you literally having a person that is sobbing because their life's work is gone, to that, like, hey, I can't wait to talk to you. I got some great news for you. You know,
We
kind
got
of,
this.
yeah, we got
this
you
fixed
back. Yeah, yeah, and that is what that's that shot in the arm that keeps you motivated. But the the silver lining is often that, okay, the takeaway is that, holy crap, I never thought this was going to happen to me. I'm just Johnny, you know, Acme Corporation, you know, not some big mover or shaker.
Never think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. One of the questions I've always had that I've never heard answered. So let's say the hospital gets nailed like they did up here. Okay. We'll use 20 million as the ransom that was asked for. What prevents the hospital pays the money? What if they don't give the key back or whatever? I don't even know how that works. What is the person holding on the other end that they get, that the hospital gets back for that 20 million? And couldn't that person just keep it?
So that happens all the time. The short answer is there's nothing that stops that. And this just happened just the other day. I was reading that Power Schools was breached. Not that I was reading this happen.
Power School, like the one that all our kids use?
Absolutely. Okay. So that it wasn't just breached the other day, but what had happened was it was disclosed that they end up paying the ransom. And these bad actors had shown evidence that they had deleted the data. You know, this is, you know, I got a letter in the mail. One of my children were affected
Is in
by
Power
this.
School?
Yep, was affected by this. That they paid. They didn't disclose immediately that they paid the ransom, but they paid the ransom, and then they were given evidence to believe that the data was deleted. Well, come to find out, they paid the ransom.
And no data.
The data was not deleted. It was sold. So now it was a double payday. Not only did they get paid the ransom, but then they also sold off the data. And I guess my prize that I get, my takeaway is that I get 2 years of free credit monitoring for my child. You know, no big deal. It's very frustrating that this is the potential outcome, that you don't get the happily ever after. You pay the money, so now you're adding insult to injury, and
Wow.
they don't give you the decryption key. Or I've even seen where they paid the ransom and the decryption key doesn't work, and the bad actor doesn't know. Oh, I'm not going to support my own. You know, I'm not going to fix it.
I'm outta here,
yeah,
man.
exactly. Like, I'm sorry, I tried. I gave you the key, but now here's where we're at. So, very real, very relevant, and constant. This is a constant
So
thing.
what does Power School do? They actually lose the data?
So the data was exfiltrated.
Wait. No. So let's say I'm Power School.
Okay.
I have all the data on all these kids. I open up my computer someday. Is all of that missing?
So it can be. It can be either ransomed, where it's like locked down and you want to pay to get it back, or they have it and they prove that they have it. You're still functional, but now you want me to delete it, pay me to delete it, allegedly.
Huh.
Maybe.
Okay.
Sometimes both. Oftentimes both, because it's the best way to get someone's attention is to prohibit them from being able to function. So that you know,
Get
back to
your
that,
attention real quick.
absolutely. Versus calling their bluff, like, well, okay, whatever. You claim you have my data. Well, now you know they do, because you can't get to your own data,
And they can show it to you.
and they can show it to
So
you.
then
Yep.
what do you do to protect your daughter other than the credit monitoring?
That's the problem. That's the reality that this world is in.
That's why you don't sleep much.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
That's why these grays are poking through, is because of is because of that reality, that there just is there's a lot of modern tools and a lot of modern frameworks that if mandated would go a long, long ways. It would ensure that systems are kept current, are hardened.
So you're talking policy stuff.
I am talking policy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is stuff that I'm actively actually working with local and state legislation
You have to be.
to be the change I want to see. Back to that.
Well, they don't understand cybersecurity to this level.
No.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, the days of firewall and antivirus, that's kind of locked in. You know, I change my password every once in a while. Well, that it's more than that. It's having unique passwords. I have a password manager because I don't want to know the passwords to my platforms. They're all randomly generated. They're all super complex. 32
Oh yeah,
to
I've
64.
seen some of those that are generated.
Yeah. You know,
Just stinks when you need to log in from your phone at
Agreed.
home and you're like,
I know. It's a trade-off because it's what's worse, you know, that or being not able to log in, or you log in and there's nothing there. You know, I mean, and it's even gotten more complicated than just having a complex password. I mean, there's even SIM swapping, where like your phone has a little chip in it that communicates with the cell towers. You know, bad actors are able to port your number over, get those codes that are sent to your phone, and now they've had full access to your banking. I mean, it's not even this like elementary type stuff. We're talking like it's super advanced,
super sophisticated.
Yeah. Where they're able to steal like stuff off your phone. You're sleeping, and you wake up the next morning, you don't have cell coverage for some reason, you know, and then you call up your carrier, and they tell you that, well, your phone isn't, the SIM for your car, you know, your phone isn't associated with the phone you're calling about. And then you're like, well, what do you mean? And then they like, okay, let's restore service. So you restore service, and then all of a sudden, all these notifications come in because your phone's back on, and your online banking passwords been changed. You see all these one-time passwords that came in that you didn't request. All of a sudden, PayPal is now being activated, and money's being shuffled around. I mean, this isn't stuff that like happens in the movies. This is stuff that I see and hear about
in your life
all the time. Yeah, and it's not a statistics game, or you know, it's becoming more and more common to the point where like carriers and organizations are putting in intentional like mousetraps to try to harden this stuff. But that's always because of reactive. The big thing that we need to see more of is proactive, more mandates around the HIPAA rule hasn't been touched in 20 years. 20 years. That's longer than I've been doing this. Think about that. Like, you know,
should have been updated by now.
Oh my gosh, like 20 times.
Yeah.
At a minimum. I mean,
every year.
Because like, I mean, think about when iPhones and smartphones entered the world.
The chat.
Absolutely. Entered the chat. That's right. You know, there was never, there was like, wait, the flip phones that was cool.
I had one of those.
Yeah, same.
They were so cool.
I had the Motorola Razr, and I thought this was like, how's it going to get any better than this? And then the very first, you know, iteration of the Apple iPhone came out.
It was amazing.
Yeah, but that changed the landscape for everything. And then iPads, you know, you don't just mobile devices became prominent. Like, I would rather lose my phone than my wallet. I'm sorry, I'd rather lose my wallet than my phone. Let me make sure I said that right, because what I have in my phone is my everything. My wallet, you know, that used to be the opposite though, where like you have that highly coveted. You don't want to lose anything that's in there. This is the complete opposite.
This is opposite.
Yeah, because there's so much that goes on between, and I'm not talking about my world and like customer data. I'm talking about just
everyday people.
Yeah, what I have in there. You know, the fact that I can use my phone to pay or pull up my banking information, send an email that has any kind of confidential information in it. Like, it's all just
your contacts, phone numbers.
Yes,
It's all important
highly
stuff.
sensitive stuff. Yeah.
Okay, if someone listening wants to reach you, like they're like, hey, I've got a medical firm in the state of Michigan. I'd like to talk to you. How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, just hit up commonangle.com. We have a great contact, you know, us page that asks a few questions about just what you're looking for. And then that fires right off to my team. My team is able to handle that, and that all those go right by my desk. It's important for us to make sure we're a good fit, both sides, you know, and it's there's a lot to consider when it comes to cybersecurity, and we don't expect anybody to be anything close to a subject matter expert. That's where we fit in. That's where our call is.
That's the service that you provide.
Yeah, absolutely. Let them focus on what they're strong at, because that's what makes the world go round. But yeah, they hit us up at commonangle.com, and the rest just kind of falls into place. We use a lot of magic and automation to behind the scenes to make it all happen. But you get a live person, oftentimes that will walk through whatever it is that you're concerned about, whatever you want to talk about, whether it's a new insurance requirement that you got from your carrier that you can't. I don't know what language this is. It definitely is English, but I don't know what it's saying.
Right.
You know, to just, hey, strategy. What I want to take a look at my systems. We offer, you know, free assessments for both on the like IT infrastructure and cybersecurity side of things. So, you know, whatever the need is, you know, back to what I was saying earlier, just because we specialize in government and healthcare, there's a lot of parallels to the manufacturing, the retail, the education arms that we support, nonprofits. Sure. I mean, galore. We're big at just the more we can help, the better we're going to leave this place in the end.
Sure. Well, Des, that was an amazing conversation.
Yeah, likewise, Doc.
Hey, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your busy day.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I bet your phone's been buzzing in your pocket.
Hey, but you know what? It's nice to put that down for a minute too.
Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate you sitting down and giving us some of your insight and your wisdom. Thank you very much for being on the Purpose Maker.
Anytime.
We're going to close this down. If you guys want to get in touch with Des, commonangle.com, and I'll put some links underneath. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.